We're always told that the more you save to invest, the faster you'll reach financial freedom. But what if I told you that there's a point where saving more stops helping and could even hold you back? After running the numbers for incomes ranging from $50,000 to $500,000, I think I found the sweet spot for all of them. The savings rate that gives you the biggest payoff without sacrificing your lifestyle in the process. And once you hit it, you might want to quit saving more and shift your focus entirely. Your savings rate is the biggest engine behind your journey to financial freedom. Some people think higher investment returns are the key to getting there faster, and they're not wrong. Higher returns would speed things up. The problem is that investment returns are unpredictable. You won't know what kind of returns you're going to get until after the fact, and there's no guarantee that they'll even be quote-unquote high or above average in the first place. Others assume that earning a higher income will be the shortcut to hitting their financial freedom number. While this can definitely be true, it's extremely difficult to out-earn bad spending habits. Just ask my ninth ex-wife. That's why your savings rate matters more than both returns and income when it comes to reaching your financial freedom number. It's the one thing that you can directly control, and it is the foundation everything else is built on. The relationship between income and expenses is what ultimately determines your savings rate and how fast you can reach that final number. Think of them like two levers that you can adjust to create the outcome that you're aiming for. Pulling down on expenses raises your savings rate, allowing you to invest more and speed up your journey to financial freedom. But it means tightening your spending today. Pushing up on expenses lowers your savings rate and stretches your timeline, but it does give you greater spending flexibility in the present. It's a delicate balance, and your savings rate is a perfect example of the Thomas Sowell quote, "There are no solutions, only trade-offs." The trade-off you're making is between spending now and building financial freedom later. Many people in the financial independence community take this concept to the extreme. They aim for savings rates of 50% or more, knowing that it can drastically shorten the time that it takes to retire early. Now, on the other hand, more traditional advice like what Fidelity suggests recommends saving 15% of your income, assuming that you'll work a full career and retire at a more conventional age. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. It's all about the trade-off that you're willing to make. Whether you're aiming to retire early or sticking to a more traditional timeline, there is a savings rate that can give you the biggest advantage without unnecessary sacrifices. Now, I crunched the numbers to find out that sweet spot, and once you see it, you can decide how you want to adjust based on the trade-offs that matter the most to you. To keep things simple, the data breakdown we're about to explore assumes an income of $100,000, a financial freedom target of $1.5 million, a 7% average annual return, and $0 invested. When I say savings rate throughout this video, I'm referring to the money that you are actually investing and not any additional money that you're setting aside for other things. After running the numbers across various income levels and financial freedom goals, the general observations stayed consistent. Only the speed at which someone hit their financial freedom number changed because, of course, the more you earn with a consistent savings rate, the faster you'll hit that final number, depending on how low it is. Across all income levels, the biggest change in years for someone to reach their financial freedom number came when they went from a 5 to 10% savings rate. In this example, you can see that just increasing their savings rate by 5% will shave off 10 years, which is huge. When I ran the other income levels, it would range anywhere between 8 and 10 years, so still pretty darn high. Across all income levels, increasing your savings rate from 5% to 25% delivered the most significant impact by drastically reducing the number of years needed to reach your financial freedom target. In this example, it knocked off 21 years. After a 25% savings rate is where I thought things started to get interesting, because in the past, I and a lot of other people always said to increase your savings rate as high as possible all the time. But it's right around here at every income level and different financial freedom numbers that we start to see the diminishing returns kick in. In this example, we can see the increase in your savings rate from 25% to 35% only shortens the time needed to reach your final number by 4 years. We'll address whether this is worth it later in the video, but as you can see, once you surpass a 35% savings rate, each additional 5% increase only cuts roughly 1 year off the time it takes to reach your financial freedom target. I'll be honest, I had never taken a close look at how increasing your savings rate directly impacts the speed of reaching your financial target, because you would just assume that increasing your savings rate will speed up the process by a lot, and it does up until a certain point. but the rate of change starts to slow down so much to where it barely makes a difference. This was a bit of an aha moment for me, so now I feel confident in saying that generally speaking, a 35% savings rate is the sweet spot to aim for. If anyone can get to this number and try to sustain it for as long as possible, they are doing very well. But this is the point where we have to take a look at the number of years it's going to take to reach that financial freedom number. In the case of our example, it would take this individual about 20 years to reach their goal of $1.5 million. For some of you, this might be too long, and your knee-jerk reaction would be to cut expenses even more to shorten that time frame. The problem is that once you get beyond that 35% savings rate, trying to save more by cutting expenses is like squeezing out a damp sponge. You've already wrung out most of the water, and any extra effort only squeezes out a few drops. That's why instead of focusing on cutting expenses further, shifting your energy towards growing your income is often the smarter move. Doing this actually comes with a triple benefit. Since your savings rate is based on a percent, when you focus on the income side of things and keep your savings rate at a max of 35%, the actual dollar amount that you are investing naturally increases. At the same time, you're also giving yourself the ability to increase your expenses, which gives you more freedom to spend on things that make life enjoyable in the present. In return, you're speeding up the time that it takes to reach your financial freedom number. When you focus too much on the expense cutting side of the equation, there is a hard limit. You're trying to stretch a fixed amount of money as far as it can go, but eventually you're going to hit a wall. At a certain point, every additional cut becomes more miserable and borderline unsustainable. Income growth, on the other hand, doesn't have the same problem. There's technically no ceiling to how much you can earn, whether that's negotiating a raise, switching to a higher paying job, or starting a side hustle. There are an unlimited number of ways that you can increase your income. Even though I've shown you how a 35% savings rate is the sweet spot, that doesn't mean that it is perfect for everyone. The right savings rate is going to depend on your goals, lifestyle, and how quickly you actually want to hit that financial freedom number. So here's my simple framework for deciding how much your savings rate should be. Step 1 is to start with a baseline savings rate. 15 to 20% is a solid starting point because you get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of how much time it shaves off the years to your financial freedom number. These amounts should be highly achievable for most people unless you are facing significant financial challenges like high debt or major expenses that you can't get rid of quickly. Step 2 is to adjust up based on lifestyle and trade-offs. Think through what you are willing to give up or what you refuse to sacrifice in exchange for reaching your financial goal. In some cases, if you're way behind on saving for the future, then you're not going to have a choice but to increase your savings rate and sacrifice more today. The key is finding a balance between enjoying life now and building the future that you want. In the book, The Power of Regret, the author suggests using a decision-making tool called the regret minimization framework. It's where you make a decision by asking yourself, will I regret not doing this in 10 or 20 years? Jeff Bezos is also famous for using this framework when deciding if he should quit his job to start Amazon.
So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later.
I really like this idea because it forces you to determine not only the dollar value of your decision, but also the life value as well. For example, let's say you are currently saving 20% of your income, but you have the ability to push that up to 35%. The question is, would it actually be worth it for you? Now imagine instead that you bump your savings rate to 30% instead of that 35%, freeing up enough cash to take the family on a yearly vacation. Sure, it might delay your financial freedom date by say 2 years, but in exchange, you get to spend quality time with your kids and create some pretty great memories, especially while they're still young and actually excited to go on trips with you. Unless you were some soulless psychopath, I'd imagine that's a trade-off that you won't regret. You're not going to be lying on your deathbed thinking, oh, I really wish wish I saved 5% more money instead of taking my family on those vacations. Step 3 is to consider life changes and reassess annually. We can lay out the best plan in the world, but life is like this hippy-dippy, flowy thing that we're all moving through. It never plays out like these static numbers in our spreadsheet. That's why you need to embrace change. There will be times when shifts in your income or expenses require you to temporarily adjust your savings rate. Ask anyone who has had a kid. Suddenly, you're budgeting for diapers, daycare, and every random baby gadget Instagram influencers swear you need to survive. It's like having a tiny human that comes with a subscription fee that you cannot cancel. Well, some of you treat it like a subscription that you can cancel, but let's not get into that, please. The key is to keep moving forward, then reassess and adjust your savings rate once or twice per year, even if you have to take a step back every now and again. Whenever you talk about savings rates or financial strategies, there are always going to be different opinions and perspectives because personal finance is not one size fits all. So let's take a minute to address some of the alternative viewpoints that are worth considering. First, this whole 35% savings rate target is going to be more difficult for people starting at lower versus higher household incomes. Earning $50,000, then setting aside 35% only leaves you about $33,000 to spend on expenses, which might be pretty darn tough depending on where you live. Enter in the extreme frugal people who are going to be telling us how we can do it if we're just willing to dumpster dive behind our local grocery store. No, we're not doing that, so kick rocks and get the heck out of here. Well, if you make $150,000, then setting aside 35% leaves you almost $98,000 to spend on expenses, which is much, much easier. So if you're on a lower income, then aim for the baseline savings rate of 15 to 20%, then try to focus on the income side of things so you can bump up that savings rate closer to 35% at some point. I know there's a ton of super savers out there who get off on a savings rate of more than 50%. My highest savings rate was over 80% at one point, so I completely understand and get it. For those weirdos that love this sort of thing, I say ignore the diminishing returns from a higher savings rate and go for it, as long as you don't mind living on those lower expenses. But I will say that if you're like my overly resourceful, frugal sister who washes out and hang dries used plastic baggies, then please go get your freaking head checked because you are taking it too far. I hope she didn't mind that I just called her out publicly, but I'm sure she'll be okay. In all seriousness, just make sure that if you get burnt out by a super high savings rate at some point in the future, then don't hesitate to let off the gas a little bit. I have worked with a few people in this position in the past, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get them to spend a little more and save a little less. They made this high savings rate such a badge of honor that trying to get them to reduce it was like asking them to put their new puppy to sleep, even though they were way ahead on saving toward their financial freedom number. Up until this point, I've shown you how a 35% savings rate is the sweet spot that you should be aiming for. But there is a point where the sweet spot changes, and it's based on where you start from. As I showed earlier, if you have $0 invested, increasing your savings rate from 35% to 40% only shortens the timeline by 1 year. That's why some of you might not find it worthwhile to push beyond this. That 35% sweet spot starts to decrease when we start accounting for already having some money invested. It starts at around the $75,000 mark, where the savings rate sweet spot drops to 30%, then again to 25% at $150,000. As your initial investment amount grows, this trend continues. Additional savings become less impactful in shortening your timeline because your existing investments are already doing the heavy lifting. Compound growth takes over, making new contributions matter less. It's a big reason why you'll see some people doing what's called coast fire, where they build up enough investments early on that they no longer need to contribute much or anything to their retirement accounts. Instead, they let time and compound growth do the heavy lifting, knowing that their existing portfolio will grow large enough by retirement to meet their financial goals. The spreadsheet I've been showing you in this video is just one of several powerful tools included in my personal finance spreadsheet bundle, which will be available soon. If you'd like to be the first to know when it's ready, join the waitlist down in the description below. Once you decide on a savings rate for yourself, you're going to need to know how to invest the money, which I cover in this video to your left next. Hit that like button before you go. I'll see you in the next one, friends. Done.